Welcome to my podcast. I'm so excited to have you. We have special guest Leola on, and she's a pleasure priestess. And we will be talking about her new sacred sex ed book. She's a best-selling author, and I'm excited to dive into all things Tantra and pleasure. So go ahead and introduce yourself to my audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Tia, for having me on. And thank you so much to the listeners for opening yourself up to a sacred and sexy and maybe even taboo conversation. My name is Leola. I am the author of bestseller Sacred Sex Ed. I am also a retreat host. I host Tantra retreats, Tantra play parties. I do a bunch of online programs as well and have an online community, which is a safe space to explore all that you are with a bunch of sex positive, but also growth minded humans that are here for intimacy and depth. And my background is in Tantra and shamanic sexuality. And what I love about both of those lineages is that there's this recognition that there's a spiritual world and there's a physical world and there's an energy that connects them. Mm-hmm. And it's the energy that brings us all into this world, which is sex and sexuality and procreation.
Ooh, I love that. Juicy, sexy, all about pleasure. So I would love to do some fun icebreakers. Are you down with that?
Let's do it.
What's one of your favorite?
We could do that one.
Yeah. What's one of your favorite sex positions?
Let's see. One of my favorite sex positions is I really like being on top. I love that, but I also love just like vanilla missionary as well. I love to be able to look at my partner in the eyes. I also love to like be on my knees and be looking up and to be in this energy of devotion and worship. So yeah, those are a few of my faves.
Sexy. And what is your go-to favorite sex toy? So if you had to live with just one sex toy for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Yeah, great question. I love crystal wands. So these are kind of like crystal, like they're dildos, but they are made out of like crystals. So I have one. If I had to choose one, I think the one that I would choose would be this blue quartz Amrita wand. So it's all blue and it's like curved. It has a bulb at the top. Ooh. And so it's just really, really beautiful. It has a nice weight to it. It's really great for reaching the G spot. I get all of my wands from wands.com. It's WAANDS, but they've got great crystal pleasure products. If you use the code Leola, you get 15% off. Just like a random plug.
I'll definitely put that in there. And I love wands. I'm actually wearing a yoni egg right now.
Oh my God, look at you. Oh, I wish I would have known. I would have put one of mine in. They're great. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, I don't know, either it's a little bit non-traditional, the crystal yoni products, but they just feel so much more magical than like a normal like silicone, or I like glass too, but it just it feels a little bit more like special and supercharged.
Has some special energy. I know I put it in and I was like, I'm manifesting love to myself and good energy and high vibes.
They're great.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, they're great.
Okay, last one is, what's the weirdest place you've ever had sex or intimacy?
The weirdest place I've ever had sex or intimacy. So I would have to say, well, I'm in the Mile High Club, which is way overrated, by the way.
I just got back from, flying to New York, and I was like, I do not want to have sex in this bathroom. It's so tiny. But yes, okay.
It's
so
like,
weird.
It's like the opposite of tantric sex, having sex in an airplane, because you've got to be like fast. You're not totally able to be in your body because you're like worried about someone's going to come in. Can they hear? Like all the things. Yeah. I'm glad I did it. I would do it again on like a private plane or one of those like first class pods or something. But that's kind of weird. I don't know, other places. I once like gave a blowjob on like a kayak, like in the middle of a river. That was fun. On top of a lifeguard stand at night on Miami Beach. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's been some interesting ones.
Yeah, I have and we don't know which grandma this is, so that's not giving anything away. But I had sex on top of my grandma's kitchen counter.
Oh, nice.
So I feel like that one's first one that I was thinking about. That's weird. But yeah. Okay. Well, let's dive into some fun stuff. Okay. So what got you into Tantra?
So first, what I want to just make sure it's clear with everyone is like what Tantra actually means, because I think that it's so misconstrued and it's so subjective as well. So Tantra is a Sanskrit word, and tan means to expand and tra means to liberate. So if you put those two words together, Tantra means to create a lifestyle that supports expansion and liberation. And what's so beautiful about that is that it is so broad and it looks different from person to person. And what is expansive and liberating to you in one part of your life can look very different in another part of your life. Now, Tantra in of itself isn't just about sex. It's been very sexualized in the West, and via the lineages of Neo-Tantra and Red Tantra, which I'm all like, obviously I'm game for. I'm here like all in red with a book called Sacred Sex Ed. But Tantra is so much more than that. And there are more classical forms of Tantra as well as white Tantra that are a little bit more about the internal process and are a bit more monastic and sometimes prescriptive in nature. So I just want to put that out there as like a blanket statement that Tantra is so much more than sex. But I feel like we're on a podcast that is sexy in nature. Great question. So I had a lot of trauma. I had a lot of limiting beliefs about what was possible for me in this life, about my body. And I grew up in, the Midwest, and there was a lot of, religious conditioning, and it just set me up to be in a place where there just was a lot that needed to be healed. And then on top of that, because of my inherently traumatic sexual education, which so many of us have, I like to say that pretty much everyone in the Western world has sexual trauma, even if they didn't experience an acute event such as sexual assault. Everyone has some sort of sexual trauma just because of the way that we teach about sexuality, which is shame-inducing, fear-based, not entirely honest. And so that's really what I had. I got, fear-based, unworthy, like very particularly shame-inducing sex education from religion, from my parents, from school sex ed, and then on top of it, from my peers. Like I remember one of my very first experiences hearing about sexuality in school was from a boy who was being bullied because he liked to like eat women out. So what did I learn?
What?
Yes.
Wait, what would they say?
They were like, that's gross. You shouldn't do that. Like a bunch of the other boys were really like giving this guy shit for like being like,
so dumb. That's like the most hetero thing is to like women's pussy and eat it out. What? I would say it's the opposite, but that's ridiculous. But yes, I do remember in school it would be like, oh, gross, ooh, pussy. And I'm like, okay, your fucking penis isn't that great either. Like, especially when I was younger, I was like, they're ugly. Yeah, exactly. So what did I learn from that? I learned that my pussy is gross and that I shouldn't let anyone eat it out. So I had like all these backwards beliefs just like stirring around in my subconscious. And so when I finally like began to explore myself sexually, I just didn't have any information on how to do it safely or how to be empowered, but I knew that there was something more. So I really just went for it. And with that, I had a bit of like a slutty phase or two, and I'm here for like a slut phase. Like I'm not bashing it, but for me in that part of my life before I had a sacred sexual education, it led to a lot of sexual trauma. Like I put myself in so many situations that weren't really safe and had a lot of, Me Too type of moments and also like very real sexual assault experiences. And so by the time I was in my early 20s, I was just really wrecked, like inside my emotional and sexual body. And I randomly met this dude. He wasn't my type at all, but he had this like magnetism about him that made me say yes to a date with him. And we became lovers, and it
I came to find out that his previous partner was a tantrika, like a female tantric practitioner. And so it wasn't like he was doing anything special or that he was special, but he brought this intention and presence to intimacy that I had never experienced before. And it created this new blueprint and these new standards for what I wanted sexually as well as in relationships in terms of, again, intimacy and connection. And that was kind of the beginning of how I got into it. I was really just in it for the sex tricks in the beginning, but not too long after I dove deeper into the practices, I learned that it was so much more. And I didn't just heal my relationship to my sexuality and my body. I also, healed my relationship to my family of origin, and I started making more money, and I stepped into my purpose work, and like my whole life really changed.
Wow, I love that. What would you tell somebody that has gone through sexual trauma and they're on that journey and they have a lot of limiting beliefs around sex and intimacy? I could even name some where they're like, oh, all people want me for is sex. Yeah. These are common ones I hear. Or there's not anybody that I'm attracted to that wants to have sex with me, or that partners that are healthy. So what would you tell them to start their healing journey?
Yeah. So the first thing that I would say is this is not your fault at all. Absolutely not. No matter if you were drinking, no matter if you can track, I shouldn't have been there, I knew I was supposed to leave, whatever it is, this is not your fault. And unfortunately, this is a symptom of a society where we're creating a relationship with sex that is so far from what is true and sacred and real. And I truly believe that the tools in this book, Sacred Sex Ed, do two things. Really, they empower you to have the best sex of your life, but they also drastically, they have the capacity to drastically reduce sexual violence. There's this study by the Crime Institute. I don't remember the full name of the institution, but the institute basically found that people that have been previously victims of sexual assault are 10 times more likely to become perpetrators. And so it's very likely that if you experience sexual assault, your perpetrator also experienced sexual assault. And we've got to stop this at the source. Yeah. And, so my journey into this world, another piece of like when I stepped into doing this work professionally, came from actually working with survivors of sexual assault and sexual violence, and actually sex trafficking. I went to India and I worked with girls. I was working on a documentary about sex trafficking in South Asia, and they were doing incredible work, but they weren't addressing the root cause. They were freeing the innocent, they were arresting the bad guys, but they weren't addressing the demand. Like, why do people want to rape a child? Like, where does that come from? And to me, it's because people are so disempowered, especially like they found that the people that were buying sex from these children weren't like necessarily like high ranking people. They were like mostly the lower class who were being bossed around all day and felt so disempowered. Wow. And so there's this link to sexual assault in being disempowered. So that's one whole piece, but specifically with people that have been, a victim of sexual assault, the first piece is to really recognize what happened, what got you there, and to become sexually sovereign, meaning you're confident and comfortable in knowing what are your desires, what are your boundaries, and feeling really solid in communicating that. Because so many people that experience sexual assault, it comes from a place where they're in a freeze or a fawn response. That's not to say that, people that are fighting or fleeing don't also experience sexual assault, but that's a really big piece, is having that sovereignty.
Nice. What would you say is one of the first steps to help that problem?
Specifically with sexual sovereignty or
human trafficking and men, women. I mean, I would say it's mostly men. not feeling empowered. Like, how do we solve that issue? Like therapy, helping them get over their trauma. I don't know. What would you say?
Yeah. So the first thing that I want to acknowledge is the very real gender conditioning that we have. And the fact that, as you said, while men are also victims of sexual assault, it tends to be that the male is the perpetrator. And again, females also can be perpetrators of sexual assault. But most of the time it's a male perpetrating to a female. And what we see is that men aren't really taught how to ask for consent, and women aren't really taught how to say no. And then on top of that, both people aren't really often encouraged to go into their depths to really figure out what they desire. There's this sexual shadow. And so sexual shadow work is a big part of my work, and also to me, the first step in from both sides, helping to, eliminate this problem. Should I go into what sexual shadow work is?
Sure. Yeah. What's sexual shadow work?
Yeah. So the shadow and shadow work is a concept coined by Carl Jung, who is an incredible Swiss psychiatrist. If you've been in like the healing or growth modalities, you've probably heard of the shadow and Carl Jung's work, but specifically it relates to sexuality in that it's the parts of our sexual subconscious that we are disowning, that we are, putting into the background, that we're not fully integrating because we are afraid that it's not okay or bad or wrong for whatever reason. And we all have that, again, because our sexual education is so, generally speaking, shame inducing. And so we tend to stuff our desires down. And then what that happens in the role of being a perpetrator is that since we're not acknowledging what's going on in the shadow, it comes out in sneaky ways and we become more manipulative. Instead of asking outright for what we want or we desire, we try to push this agenda subconsciously.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I got into shadow work, I don't know, about over a decade ago. And that was my kind of initiation to sexual awakening and growth. And I actually talk about it in my TED Talk because that was one of the moments that shifted things.
Wow.
I noticed I was shaming one of my friends sleeping with a lot of people. And I was just even though she was one of my best friends and we hung out a lot, I noticed myself kind of getting shaming her in my mind. And then I heard of shadow work and I looked it up and I did it, and it was on that. And then I realized that I ultimately did want to feel more free sexually. I wanted to feel like I could have sex if I wanted to, and I didn't have to have a boyfriend first. I didn't have to date them for forever or something, and I could explore if I desired to. So it didn't have to show up in the same way that she used her sexuality, but I found a way to start playing with what is my open sexuality. So that was the initiation was shadow work.
Yeah. And that's such a big piece. One of the pieces of shadow work is tracking your internal dialogue and noticing, are you shaming or judging someone else? Because it's probably a piece of you is actually envious of what they've created and the amount of freedom that they have in their expression. That used to be something I did all the time. Women on Instagram and in their sexy outfits and dancing in such a liberated way. It's that's so bad and slutty but deep down, it was me feeling I'm not allowed to do that. So how dare her? How is she allowed to do it? And over time, it became my permission slip. It became, evidence for me as well.
Yeah. So ladies, if you start getting triggered of women online, of somebody dancing sexy, of your friends or someone that's sexually liberated, maybe look inward and ask yourself, is this mine? Where did it come from? Look into the shadows and wonder and inquire about it and be like, ooh, is there a part of this that you might desire? And then start bringing it out. It could be in different ways, but usually shadow work is a part of yourself that is either hidden or wanting to be let out or suppressed. And as you do this, you just become more confident, free, expressed, authentic and just you radiate because you don't have these shadows and masks holding you down.
Yeah. And I'll also say that it goes both ways. Like sexual liberation doesn't always look like, casual sex or like dancing wildly on Instagram, whatever.
Yes.
It can also look like conscious celibacy, which I went through. I actually used to like judge the whole like conscious celibacy movement because in a way, and I think that this is still true, in a way, I feel that a lot of that movement is repackaged religious trauma, but now it's like from the guru rather than from our religion that's saying that, semen retention is the way and you shouldn't masturbate or whatever. And so when I started to see this like conscious celibacy movement, this like, I'm waiting for my person, like whatever, was like, good for you, not for me. And also I was a little bit judgmental. Like they don't know what they're missing, And interestingly, like a month or so before I met my husband, or my husband and I started dating, I got the intuitive nudge during a full moon ceremony that I needed to be celibate for a month. And so I was so resistant at the time, and I ended up doing it, and it was really, really beautiful and powerful for me. And so there's ways in Tantra, there's no right or wrong. There's no good or bad. Yeah. It's about figuring out what is your highest vision and what sort of actions, perspective, style of living is going to be in support of that. And it can change. So I've had my Sacred Slut intentional chapters, and I've also had my conscious celibacy chapters. And this book is meant to, especially the second part of the book, is meant to help you discover what does that look like for you now in this chapter.
Yes, I love that so much. And it's so important to sometimes go inward and find out what you're letting in and how it's affecting you.
Yeah.
And then take note of what happens when you do take some time off or have celibacy.
Yeah.
After I realized I was having like fuckboy after fuckboy or bad relationships and like emotionally unavailable people that I was just like drained dating wise, and I just started kind of hating men and how they were treating me. I took a 5 to 6 month celibacy.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I'm so done with men. Something needs to change. And I knew that, if you keep having a repeated pattern, that I'm the main component. So something needs to change.
Yeah.
So I took like a long break, and it felt really nice. I got really confident. I just focused on myself. And then once I felt ready to date again, the level of men that I surrounded myself and went on dates with was a different caliber.
Yep.
And they treated me better. They took me out. Like I made standards and boundaries for myself, and then I stuck to them. But I needed to purge all the men in my life, all the people that were just making me feel like shit. And then when I came back, I was like, ooh, wow, this is great. Like, first guy, like, I know it sounds funny, or I don't know. He took me to Dominican Republic, and he was such a great guy, and he was so nice. And he showed me like what I deserved of like being a woman and like being taken out and holding my hand and intimacy, things that I was lacking with these fuckboys.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like you got really clear on what you wanted and like were unfuckable with in your standard, and it just magnetized such a much more high caliber dude. And I love that.
So celibacy is great, guys, and sacred slut, all the things. No judgment here.
Yeah, to me, it's all about intention. Are you doing a celibate chapter out of fear of like being judged by your like spiritual guru, or out of like being like dirty or whatever? Or are you doing it from a place of self-empowerment and self-awareness, self-curiosity? And then also making sure, if you're going to do the celibate chapter, to still keep that life force moving, whether it be like sensual dance or self-pleasure or immersing yourself in a new hobby that really brings out your creative energy, right? And then, the vice versa is true of the slut chapter. Where is the intention there? Is it because you're wanting to learn more about what you like and don't like, and just share your liberation with others and be this like butterfly of evidence in the world? Or are you doing it because that's how you're getting validated or whatever?
Yes. Okay, let's dive into that. So why is it important to prioritize self-pleasure?
So how you meet yourself is going to be indicative of how other people meet you sexually. So there are so many benefits of having a self-pleasure practice. That being one of them is you're setting a new bar with your body, getting to know what you like, what you don't like, so that you're able to more clearly communicate that to your partner. You're also, if you're doing self-pleasure intentionally, you're also cultivating a relationship with yourself and your highest self. And like, I like to use, self-pleasure as like meditation, like as a way to connect to something outside of myself. I love self-pleasure.
Yeah.
There's just so many benefits to it. It's great for your nervous system as well. It also, if you're not having sex with lots of people, or you're like in a chapter where you're maybe just beginning to date, it allows you to be really discerning about who you're going to let near your body, because you're not coming from a place of like, I'm starving for orgasm, right?
Or love or attention.
Love. Yeah. Because you love you, and people are like, my husband, it makes me come. He's amazing. He's a sex god, but I fuck myself just as good as he does, if not better. And I think that that's a rare thing for women to experience, but that happened because of my cultivation of self-love and self-pleasure.
Yeah. I mean, my orgasms, my joy, my pleasure, my confidence all come from really loving my body, loving my pussy, honoring it, getting connected to my body, looking at it. It's all very important in your sexual health. What would you tell somebody that really has resistance, and maybe they don't understand why, or they don't think it's important, and they're like, oh, it's fine. Like, I've heard this. I'm from Utah, and I used to hear like, oh, like, I don't need to masturbate because I can just get it from somebody else, and I like that, and that's what I want. I don't need that from myself.
Yeah, I don't want to yuck anyone's yum. So if that's like really like, but you got to give it like a real honest try. You've got to really like commit to the self-pleasure practice and exclude that truly as an option before I would be like, good for you, not for me sort of vibe with the,
give it a try.
Yeah. Give it a good college try.
All right. And if you want to break out of shame, heal your sexuality, own your badass confidence where you feel sexy as fuck, tapped in, turned on, and have the best mind-blowing sex of your life, multiple O's, and just going deeper and more intimate with yourself and your partners, I would love to work with you. I have multiple ways to work together. I have my Sexy Goddess signature course. It's a 10-week program that takes you through all the steps. We also have an emotional release workshop included and a yoni egg workshop included that really helps you tap into your emotions and allow more pleasure and feeling into your life. If we are a good fit, I would love to work with you one-on-one, but DM me or book a 20-minute free call. Check the links in the bio.
I would be curious if there is some lingering trauma or lingering limiting beliefs around what you may or may not have learned about masturbation as a child. Like, I grew up in the Midwest and it was like a sin to touch your body. So I would be curious if there's some sexual shadow work there. And I think that there's also this piece on where is your resistance to loving yourself as well. And is there something there that wants to be worked through? One practice that I really like to bring to my clients is mirror masturbation, and kind of starting at a place where it's like, actually don't just go in and masturbate, but maybe eye gaze with yourself in the mirror and really begin to forge that self-intimacy, almost as if you were like just beginning to date the love of your life. You would maybe want to move slowly and savor each of those sexual milestones or intimate milestones. So first, really eye gazing with yourself. And then maybe the next day you get undressed in front of the mirror and observe where your mind goes. Are there things that you like about your body that, your body could benefit from hearing said out loud? Or are there places where you're immediately going to criticize, and what do those parts of your body actually do for you, rather than then just seeing the rolls on your stomach, thinking about like, oh, like my body is like protecting me and my body is processing all this food, and like how beautiful is that? And then moving slowly into, you know, looking at your pussy and processing what comes up there. And, you know, and I'm speaking more to pussy owners, but this is just as great if you have a cock.
Yeah.
But, you know, thinking about what comes up there and really processing at each step your worthiness of love, your worthiness of being put on a pedestal, your beauty, your unique inherent beauty as well. And then maybe moving into stimulation, penetration, etc.
Yeah. And I've found that the deeper you go with yourself, your self-love, your pleasure, your orgasm, your exploration, your turn-ons, all those things, the more you know about yourself, the more deeper you can go with partners.
Absolutely. Your relationship with yourself is a mirror to how others are going to treat you, as well as the depth that's available for you.
Yeah. Just like healing or coaching. Like the deeper you go, the deeper people can meet you there. Like, I'm trying to think one. As I healed my emotional trauma or like sexual trauma, I could open up and feel more comfortable. Or, like loving my yoni, looking at my yoni, like actually loving her and feeling confident about her. Now I can just like be naked and feel confident and feel sexy and feel empowered. And then what happens is, say I'm at a play party and I'm like not wearing underwear, people are just like, oh, you have such a pretty pussy. And it's just like you're magnetizing it because of your confidence, because of your magnetism and aura around it. Like it's felt. So even if it's not for yourself, sometimes it's like go deeper so you can go deeper with your partner.
Yeah, absolutely. What we don't realize or consciously think about is, for many of us, we were conditioned to kind of have sex in the dark and very quickly, you know, like it was often something that we were hiding. So, you know, we're masturbating and we're like not trying to make any sound, and it's at night and like darkness and the door is closed, and we want to just get it over with as quickly as possible so that we're not caught. And then, you know, hiding the evidence, and it's just creating this disassociation with our sexual selves and as well as our naked body. So there's really this liberation that comes when we're willing to like fully see ourselves in that way, and that empowers us to let other people see us in that same light. And also it builds our discernment to be able to have self-trust, to know when it's safe to open up to someone sexually, because we start to get familiar with how our body opens and closes depending on the environment and the people that we're with.
Yes.
Yeah.
So important. So ladies, explore yourself a little deeper and you'll notice changes around you. And what would you tell someone that struggles with self-pleasure because they were taught that it is wrong or bad? And, you know, if you believe in God or you're very Christian or it's against your religion, what could you say to that person?
Such a good question. So your sexuality is the most powerful energy in your body, and it's the most powerful energy on the planet. And it's literally the energy that made you. It's why we're all here. So how could it not be sacred? How could it not be godly? Right? Every single person, plant, animal, even the food that we eat is made by some sort of procreative, you know, energy. And so what I would say is really take a moment to honor and to feel into that, and to understand that when you are sexually empowered, you are your most powerful self. And this is where it gets a little conspiracy theorist, but to me, what better way to control people than by making them afraid of the energy that makes them the most powerful? So there's really this act of reclamation of our power and finding God in your body and using your body as a tool for, you know, seducing the world into a greater good. It's not that this energy isn't dangerous, because it is a very powerful energy, but just like other powerful energies, like money, for example, when you become a master of such energies, you're able to wield them in ways that can make really positive, beautiful impact in the world. And that's very true with sexuality.
Awesome. Yes.
Yeah.
So everybody, sexual energy is life force energy. It is super powerful. And I am one of those people that used to put my self-pleasure to the back burner, where I was like, oh, I have to do this, I have to get that, I have to get my to-do list done. But what I've found as being a very high-achieving type A woman is actually if I prioritize my self-pleasure, my sexual energy, whether it's self-pleasure, masturbation, or even just getting in that energy from, like you said, dancing, flow, tapping into my body, moving around, I am so much more creative. That's where I get really good ideas. That's where I'm productive. Those days, I knock off my to-do list so much more. It's like, it's powerful, it's energizing. And the women I know that are like sex coaches and liberated, we tend to look more youthful, like, because it is life force energy. It's giving you energy and pleasure, and you're radiant. So just kind of like notice that, like, look at sex coaches and be like, wow, like there's a theme.
It's true. In Tantra, they say that every sexual experience is procreative in nature, even if it's not actually creating a living, breathing child. And so you can think of your sexuality as this channel for new ideas to come forth. Like so much of this book came from like, I was channeling during, masturbation, or using masturbation as a tool to get really clear about what's important to me, because I can literally find myself getting turned on by different ideas and concepts as well. And so your pleasure is a really powerful calibration tool too.
Amazing. What would you tell someone who is now wanting to explore Tantra, go a little slower, go deeper, get more in tune with their body? What are some practices to start with?
Yeah. So one thing that I will say is this book has practices at the end of every single chapter. So there are some really great ones that are tailored to each of the chapters of the book. And I would say this is a really great place to start and to get, a bunch of different rituals in one place that you can do on your own or with a partner. If you're looking for more of like a deeper dive, I would recommend that you come to one of our retreats, because it's just the best value that you're going to get in this space. And retreats are such a great place to create a new blueprint for what it means to be sovereign, liberated, and intimate with others, because you're surrounded by a bunch of other people that are super committed to their growth path as well. And so, surrounding yourself with those people naturally up-levels yourself as well, and creates evidence and a felt sense of what it means to be in community with, this level of sovereignty.
Amazing. Yes, go to one of her retreats. When is the next one?
September 12th through the 15th. So it's in about a month. But we do the couple or the co-ed retreats. They're open to singles and couples, men and women. We do them twice a year. So the next one's in February, late February.
Fabulous. And what was one of your favorite practices in the book?
Let's see. Well, I have a whole chapter on sex magic and a whole how to do sex magic. That's a great one. There's another one here. God is my dom. So playing with the energy of sacred surrender and BDSM and kink, but seeing it as you're surrendering to your higher self rather than to maybe another person, or waving the white flag in defeat, if that makes sense.
Yes. Go get her book. I started reading it. I'm super excited to dive more into all the exercises, have fun with that. I love sex magic. It's very powerful. When I'm really in tune with it, sometimes things come not even just come, but also I attract what I'm thinking of and manifesting instantly, and it's kind of wild.
When I come, all things I desire come to me.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So is there any last words what is one of the best sex tips you would tell your younger self?
Best sex tips I would tell my younger self. Well, I would definitely tell my younger self that your sexuality is sacred, your pleasure is sacred. And I would tell my younger self to let go of all of the shame around my body and sexuality, and to really just see myself as this embodied goddess, which I truly am.
Yeah. And that takes time. It takes work. It takes shadow work and pleasure and confidence and getting in tune, exploring your body. So much work. So yes, check her out, check out her book, and links are in the bio. Reach out to either one of us if you want to talk about anything we spoke about on this episode. If you want to talk about your shame, your experiences, ask us questions. My DMs are open for specific questions. What about yours? Or what do you say if you want someone to find you or reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Find me on Instagram at Talk Tantra to Me. The book Sacred Sex Ed is available on Amazon. And if you go to my website, www.talktantratome.com/book, and you put in your order number, you do get a free month in my online membership as well, which includes over 30 hours of additional, tantric and intimacy, trainings and workshops. And I also have I have a shadow work workbook at www.talktantratome.com/free. So it's for free if you put in your email.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, go check out the links in the bio. Sign up. That's an amazing deal. Go check it out. Get her book. And thank you so much for being on.
Thanks for having me. And thank you to the listeners as well.